Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Zeynep Gökçe. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani's visit to Ankara marks a turning point in Türkiye-Iraq relations. Against the backdrop of a widening conflict in Gaza and renewed Israeli strikes in Syria, Baghdad and Ankara are pushing ahead with a new strategic alignment. A series of agreements were signed covering defense and trade, but the agenda reaches far beyond security. From humanitarian cooperation in Gaza to stabilising northern Syria and managing shared water resources, both nations are expanding their regional footprint. Then there's the billion-dollar bet, the Development Road project, a transport corridor linking the Gulf to Europe through Türkiye. Iraq's Prime Minister says it's among the region's most important projects. But are some countries looking to challenge it? And can this growing partnership between Ankara and Baghdad withstand the pressures of geopolitics, or will old flashpoints resurface? For more on Türkiye-Iraq relations, joining me now from Islamabad is Hanan Hüseyin, senior expert at Initiate Futures. From Istanbul, Helin Sarı-Ertem, an associate professor at Istanbul Medeniyet University. And from Boston, Massachusetts, Hamze Haddad, a fellow at the Center for a New American Security. Thank you all for joining me. Turkey and Iraq signed 11 pacts yesterday. Hanan, in what fields do Ankara and Baghdad want to boost cooperation, and what specific areas will see the most attention?
Well, thank you for having me. I think a range of issues were kind of singled out in terms of this multi-sector cooperation, ranging all the way from migration to defense industries. But the key areas where I feel both sides would kind of build on their cooperation is in the defense industry space. We did see last month that there was a high-level security meeting between top officials from both sides, where there was a lasting consensus on deepening cooperation in these areas. I think one of the key takeaways from this particular visit was the signing of more defense contracts and agreements focused partially on indigenization. Now, that's an area where Türkiye has had a lot of expertise and strengths going on recently. We've seen a drastic growth in its overall defense exports as well, and that's an area of enduring focus for Iraq. So I think that's going to be one key area where countries are going to build on. And the other one, I believe, is going to be a bit on the migration front, because that particular agreement can go beyond just the voluntary return of Iraqi citizens from Turkey, but also entail a broader focus on combating any sort of illicit or irregular migration, something which has a regional focus, a central theme of al-Sudani's visit to Turkey.
I want to go back to some of last year's agreements. Turkey and Iraq signed a series of security agreements. Helin, what are the latest developments on that, and what new steps are the two countries planning to take in order to fight terrorism?
Okay, as you have mentioned, this is a continuation of last year's visit, let's say mutual visits and efforts to build up a new period for the relations to further up, to somehow boost the morale regarding mutual relations between Iraq and Turkey. I think it is an underlining of this decisiveness regarding the security and stability of the region, because Turkey and Iraq, as mentioned by the leaders of two sides, are not just neighbors, but also they are somehow, both in terms of security, stability, economy, social life, cultural life, they are intertwined to each other. So it's very difficult to separate the relations and just somehow downgrade it to a kind of simple neighborhood. It is especially being fed by a common history and culture. I guess both sides are trying to somehow turn this deepness, the depth, let's say, in mutual relations into a very strategic type of relations, which would cover security, stability, economy, all at the same time.
Yes, and al-Sudani actually said, we want Turkey-Iraq ties to be part of the regional stability equation. Hamze, what did he mean by that specifically? In what specific issues could the countries work together on to become part of this regional stability equation?
Well, as you know, Iraq is neighbors 6 countries, Turkey being one of them. And so, having been in many conflicts over the last 5 decades with two of its neighbors, Iraq is trying to signal this is a new era for them. They've worked hard to achieve domestic stability over the last 2 decades, and now they want to portray that in their foreign policy and have good bilateral relations with all its neighbors and try to play mediator where it can. Baghdad will be hosting the Arab League summit later this month, and it was pretty telling that the prime minister visited Turkey right before that.
Yes, and another issue is Gaza, and the leaders also aligned when it comes to Israel's brutal war on Gaza. Erdogan said Iraq and Turkey will pressure Israel more from this point on. So Hanan, what forms could this pressure take? And especially when it comes to this humanitarian aid blockade, do you see them cooperating to make the aid flow again?
I think in terms of reaching the end goals, it's going to be a bit of more of a collective exercise. But as far as Iraq and Turkey's efforts go, I think there are 3-4 pressure points where they could focus their energies on. First of all, we do see that there's momentum to kind of bypass the UN's humanitarian operations and kind of align it with an Israel-focused, US-backed arrangement, which many have criticized could even strengthen the occupation and advance the humanitarian catastrophe, which President Erdogan and al-Sudani have vowed to kind of offset. So in that space, I think momentum needs to focus on kind of strengthening their opposition to this new plan. And I think the stage is set because many of the countries all around the world, including UN member states, humanitarian agencies, are also looking for ways to step up opposition and also, in turn, facilitate the rights of Palestinians. So I think that is one space for which the time is set. In terms of other pressure points, look, Türkiye has its vantage point with the ceasefire agreements as well. We did see that the intelligence chief recently met with Hamas, looking for ways to coordinate the ceasefire and put the suffering of Palestinians to an end. And I think that, alongside a more regional effort, could also involve Iraq's own partners coming together and also looking for ways to kind of advance momentum. Because if Israel wanted to end the war, it would have happened by now. But the entire strategy behind this is that the pressure is mounting on the Netanyahu government to kind of look for ways to accept a ceasefire deal. And we've seen that from a senior US official recently as well. So I think Iraq and Turkey, in simple terms, could leverage diplomatic efforts as well as humanitarian momentum focused on key pressure points to align with their regional partners and look for ways to kind of mediate the suffering a bit before we see any enduring solution for peace.
Right, and another hot topic is Syria. So, Helen, what is the joint strategy of Iraq and Turkey regarding instability in Syria in the post-Assad setting? What's at stake for all three neighbors?
Well, almost all of the neighbors of Syria are very closely related to the stability of Syria, actually. So the logic, the rationality here is that all of them almost should have a common understanding regarding the future of Syria to rebuild the country once again in a healthy position. For that reason, I do believe that Iraq and Turkey have already talked about the importance of the stability in Syria, which is closely related to the economic situation in both countries, social situation in both countries. So we cannot separate Syria and put it to somewhere else and think about Turkey, Iraq separately. They are all intertwined to each other. And I guess it is very important for all the leaders to underline that as much as it is possible, and this was the case for Turkey and Iraq yesterday and today. And regarding the new government, the new administration in Syria, what I see is that both Turkey and Iraq are in great effort to help the new government to somehow rebuild the infrastructure, to bring back the refugees from neighboring countries. And all in all, as a conclusion, this would help the neighboring countries' stability and the projects, the enlivening of the projects like the development road.
Yes, and Hamza just mentioned the Arab League summit, which will take place in Iraq soon. And actually, al-Sudani invited Syria's new president, al-Shara, to the summit. But there are also objections in the country. There's also been calls for his arrest in Iraq. So, Hamza, why is al-Shara's visit important for Baghdad?
It's important to show good relations with your neighbor. Of course, there's a lot of sensitivity toward the new Syrian leader and his previous activities with terrorist organizations in Iraq. So it's natural that you're going to have certain sensitivities from people in having him visit the country. But I think the Iraqi government has done a good job in easing the Iraqi people into this new relationship. It started off cautious by sending its intelligence chief to Damascus, dealing with its Syrian counterparts in international summits. Before they had the Syrian foreign minister visit Baghdad for the first time. Prime Minister Sudani met with the Syrian president in Doha. So they've taken steps. They haven't jumped right into it. But having said that, there are still some in Iraq that are cautious.
Yes, and finally, we mentioned the Development Road project, a multi-billion-dollar trade corridor. Both leaders underlined its importance for the region that will connect the Gulf to Europe through Türkiye. So, Hanan, once it's completed, how much of an impact would it have on the region when it comes to trade, stability, or future prosperity?
I think the end results are going to be something that's going to be a regional benefit on a large scale. For example, when we talk about cutting off the time which is needed for cross-continental trade, we do know that on a single route from China throughout this entire route is going to slash times by about 15 days, and that makes this quite an attractive, initiative in terms of supply chain management and also integrating countries across various development stages. Because you look, as far as the financing and the strategic imperatives go, we do know that we have early guarantees from Qatar, from the UAE. Turkey's positioning as a hub connecting Asia with Europe is something which is also a bit time tested. We do see that the middle corridor in itself was making a lot of strategic headway as well. So synthesizing that with Great Fall, which is set to become the largest, port of its kind in the Middle East, connected with Turkey through stronger supply chains and regional strengths, I think it's going to facilitate a long-standing mirage for the region to go forward. Because when you look at alternatives, the India-Middle East economic corridor is marred by reservations over Israel's role, as well as financing things, much of it being an abstract, and others, of course, not having that kind of strength and political backing, as well as economic, I'd say, heft going into this. So I think with the groundwork that has been done and the kind of support that future trade requires across all these countries, I think the Development Road project is going to be something that's a bit more sustainable and receptive to future demands for regional trade.
So, Helen, how will this project enhance the economic ties between Ankara and Baghdad?
Well, it is a huge project, and it is in favor of almost all of the countries included into this project. So, I cannot give numbers, but what I see is that this is a very significant opportunity for Iraq, for Turkey, for Iran even, in order to create economic boost in the region. So the region has already suffered from civil wars, the rise or the attacks of the non-state armed actors. For that reason, I think the region is somehow thirsty for stability, for security, which would come together with economy, because people need jobs. And this project, huge project, is a very good opportunity for the people in Iraq, even in Turkey and other included countries, to have new employment opportunities. And at the same time, it is making both Iraq and Turkey, especially, as the hubs of energy supply, the hubs for especially trade supplies, financial supplies. So it's very important. I should mention that it is a kind of a multi-dimensional significance for all of the countries involved.
Right, and there could also be challenges though. So Hamza, do you see Iraq's internal divisions undermining the development road project? And what could be other potential challenges while launching this trade corridor?
Well, the first challenge that can arise is that the price tag on this on Iraq. Iraq is oil dependent. It has a massive public payroll. So anytime that we see prices of oil dip, it's not the public salaries that are going to be taking a cut. It's going to be investments, and the largest investment that we're seeing is the development road. So how much will other countries come in, step in to help in a time of crisis is yet to be seen. But like you said, there's also domestic challenges that can give Iraq trouble. It has a semi-autonomous Kurdistan region that completely occupies the border between Iraq and Turkey. And so a development road project would have to go through them. There's been some talk that they are upset with the amount of route of the development road that goes through the Kurdistan region of Iraq. So you have to iron out those domestic issues as well.
Yes, and will all regional countries be happy with this development? So the development, it's considered a rival to the Suez Canal and the Haifa port. So Hanan, do you expect Egypt and how do you think Israel and Egypt view this project?
Well, I think their reservations would be a bit predictable. I think Egypt, for example, has acquired a lot of its hard currency revenue for a long time based on marketing the Suez Canal as the most cost-effective one. The development road project effectively undermines that assumption in a positive way. So I think Egypt could look for ways to synthesize its development plans alongside this. But I think the fact that Suez Canal has been a centerpiece for Egypt's revenue collection, I think it won't be a surprise if Egypt remains a bit skeptical of the development road from a competitive lens. When you look at Israel, Israel's alignment has largely been on the back of the U.S. So the India-Middle East Economic Corridor, which I mentioned slightly earlier, looked to position the Haifa port as the central landing point in Asia. But we do know that Israel's own actions in Gaza, lack of financing for IMEC, the fact that it's still in its abstract stage, and big challenges along financing make any of these projects, IMEC and its sub-projects, a bit unfeasible. So Israel will remain exclusionary, which could lead to some reservations from the US. And Egypt is going to be slightly more skeptical given its loyalty to Suez Canal. But none of that should basically kind of undermine the promise which is being led through the development project, which obviously carries much of the regional weight and sentiments from many Gulf countries and even beyond.
Yes. So, Helen, what about Iran's stance? Because the trade corridor bypasses its territory. So do you think it could indirectly benefit from this trade corridor?
Well, as this project is dragging the attention to the Gulf region once again, I guess Iran would also benefit from this project. So at first sight, it looks like Iran might be somehow objecting the project, but there is no clear opposition from the Iranian side. What I see is that they are also trying to make up their mind and trying to see the future scenarios regarding the fate of this route, this new project, let's say. But we should not automatically think that Iran would be opposing the project. So what I see is that there are some beneficial sides for Iran as well, which is first and foremost the significance of the Gulf region, which will be underlined once again with this project. And at the same time, it is about the energy security of Iran as well. It is about the stability of Iran as well. So all in all these countries like Iraq, Turkey, and Iran, the stability of the region would somehow boost up with the materialization of this project, the development road project. So I guess when all of them think in detail, including Iran, I mean, they will see that the advantages are overcoming the disadvantages of this project.
Yes, so now going back to the latest meeting between Erdogan and al-Sudani, they also underlined the importance of the water management agreement. This has also been a sensitive issue between the sides. So Hamza, what mechanisms are put into place to monitor and enforce the terms of this deal?
Water has been a very sensitive issue between Iraq and Turkey, as well as Syria. And there actually hasn't been a lot of monitoring. There hasn't been a lot of accountability towards Turkey allowing the proportional amount of water that is supposed to go to Iraq and Syria. And so we haven't seen much pushback. And this is kind of the questions that we analyze is as bilateral relations improve between Baghdad and Ankara, as economic development between the two countries grow, will we see a trickle-down effect that will impact water relations? We've yet to see that, but obviously the hope is that things will improve in that area.
Yes. Hanan, do you think this joint management of water resources could also address challenges of climate change and drought?
I think it can, because it can be seen as a preventive measure as well. Iraq and Turkey are looking to size up the threat of water resource management well beforehand. And I think that's the kind of a contingency mindset that you do need to brace for climate effects, or at least mitigate some of them when you plan beforehand. And I think the fact that water resources and management has been a fixture in terms of Iraq and Turkey's past talks as well. We've seen varying degrees of kind of initiative coming from both sides. Makes it clear that this is not going to be something being built from scratch, but that both leaderships are confident that through a sustained and collaborative ties, they can look for mutual interventions with regional benefits for climate action in the future.
Yes, I actually want to go back to Iran, Helen. Iraq wants to balance its regional ties also with Iran, but it's seeing pressure from the US. How do you see Iraq balancing ties with Washington and Tehran?
Well, with the al-Sudani government, what I see is a much more balanced foreign policy initiative from the Iraqi side. So in the past, from time to time, they had to make biased relations, or they felt the pressure of the greater actors like United States or some regional actors like Iran. But with the Sudani government, it is a much more balanced and very careful and sensitive foreign policy that they are trying to conduct. So I'm hopeful actually for the future that with the government, the current government in Iraq, they will try to find a delicate way of managing the relations between Iran, Turkey, Syria, by taking into consideration Iraq's national interests. So looking at the domestic policies of Iraq, this is a very difficult task, as there are autonomous regions, there are different expectations and interests of all these different ethnic and sectarian groups in Iraq. The job is a difficult task, but I don't think that they will fail. I do believe that they all understand, all the regional actors have already understood the significance of preserving stability for the sake of their welfare, their nation's welfare in the future. And this shows us that both Iraq, Turkey, and maybe Iran as well will try to be security producers rather than security consumers in the coming future, because producing security, producing peace and stability in the region will serve all of their interests.
And the US also warned Iraq over Iran-backed militias, and actually al-Sudani supports this US initiative. So Hamza, now that Iran has weakened, which side do you see the militias leaning towards?
Well, it's not just the United States, but the religious authority in Najaf under the leadership of Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani has also put out statements about enforcing monopolization of arms under the state, reinforcing Iraq's sovereignty and discouraging those that undermine it. And so it's quite clear, you can read between the lines of what he means. And so other political parties have been trying to toe that line, but ultimately how weak they are or how strong they are will determine whether they'll play a spoiler or not.
All right, Hamza, Hanan, and Helin, thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Zeynep Gökçe. If you've got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.